All right. It is 11 o'clock. Welcome to Bar Talk, June 8th. We have a special guest with us today, which I'll introduce in a little bit. And I wanted to address what we have going on since we last met on June 1st. So there's a new Executive Order 56 issued by Governor Mills indicating that our elections will be on July 14th. She also indicates a few other things in that order that relate to how you hold public meetings, notice deadlines, etc. For those of you that are involved in government, I encourage you to take a look at the requirements to conduct your town meetings. On June 4th, the Maine Supreme Court issued a decision regarding examinations, essentially a clarification decision. So essentially for those who filed for the bar exam prior to the announcement that the bar exam was moved to the end of September, can obtain a refund. And then we had a revised PMO SJC2, and that revision, most importantly, addresses attorneys being able to electronically sign filings that go to the court. So I'm pretty excited about that. That was initiated by Christian Lewis and his group, and we were excited to back that, and I hope that helps a lot of us in getting our work done, especially when we continue to work primarily remotely. With that, I am excited to have Judge Levy on from the now federal court, and we all knew him to be involved in our state court system. We're happy to have him on. We do have a limited amount of time, so I am going to just hand the reins over to Judge Levy here. We did ask him to give us an update from what's going on the federal side, and to let us know what we can expect going forward, as well as some personal thoughts. So Judge Levy, are you there?
I am here.
All right.
You can hear me okay, I take it?
I can, thank you.
Terrific. Well, good morning to all. I'm delighted to participate. Thank you to the MSBA and to your members and to those of you who are joining this morning or who might be watching this in the future. I have been a judge in Maine now for 25 years, and it's fair to say that the past 3 months have been among the most challenging, or perhaps the most challenging of my career. On the one hand, it's been truly disheartening to see the process of justice downsized in our state and in some respects come to a halt. And on the other hand, I can say that the employees of the federal court and our judges, the lawyers that I've been encountering, and the people that I'm working with have, in my judgment, done great work through this situation, trying to address essential cases and planning for the day when we can be fully operational. And there's no question that that day will come. Before I talk about our court's response, the federal court's response to the pandemic, Thad suggested that I just say a little bit about the federal court itself in Maine, because not every lawyer practices in federal court. So I just want to paint a broad picture of what the federal court in Maine is. The federal court in Maine is referred to officially as the District of Maine. And the District of Maine consists of the entire state of Maine geographically. We have 2 courthouses in Maine. One is in Bangor, the Margaret Chase Smith Federal Building, and the second is here in Portland, the Edward T. Janot Courthouse. The District of Maine was one of the original 13 federal districts created by the Congress in the Judiciary Act of 1789. Of course, we were then part of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but because of the size of Massachusetts, Congress elected to create 2 districts, one from Maine, one from Massachusetts. And so the first judge who was appointed to serve as a federal judge in Maine, who was appointed in 1789, was nominated by President George Washington. So we are among the 13 oldest district courts in the United States. Today, the District of Maine has 13 authorized active district court judgeships. Those judges consist of me and my colleagues, Judge Nancy Torres and Judge Lance Walker. We also have 3 senior district judges. Under the federal law, judges can, after the required time and meet various requirements, take senior status as opposed to fully retiring, and that permits them to continue to sit and hear and decide cases. And we have 3 senior district judges who are very actively working on cases. They include Judge Brock Cornby, Judge George Singal, and Judge John Woodcock. The district has 2 magistrate judges. Magistrate judges are federal judges who are actually appointed by the district judges. One in Bangor, that's Judge John Nevison, and one in Portland, Judge John Rich. The magistrate judges handle a wide variety of matters, but their focus is on preliminary criminal proceedings such as arraignments and bail hearings and the like, civil case management, prisoner petitions, and Social Security disability appeals. But they are authorized in many cases to hear many of the same matters that the district court judges hear. And finally, we have 2 bankruptcy judges in Maine. We have the chief judge of the bankruptcy court, Peter Carey, who's based here in Portland, and we have Judge Michael Fagoni, who is based in Bangor. So let me turn now to talk about the pandemic and what the federal court has done in response to the pandemic. Beginning in mid-March, we were fortunate because in 2018, the District of Maine had adopted a pandemic and infectious disease plan. And pursuant to that plan, we began to acquire the hardware and equipment and to build the infrastructure that we would need to have our staff telework in the event of a pandemic. And so we were fortunate to have done that planning because beginning on March 13th, we immediately had all of our staff begin teleworking from home. And we were up and running immediately. The same was true for all of our chamber staff as well. Everyone has been working from home with a few exceptions. On March 18th, we adopted our second general order, and that is the order which enabled us to immediately transition to conducting hearings by telephone. And we immediately set to work to develop the capacity to hold court hearings through video conferencing. The Maine state court system has adopted PMOs, and here in federal court, we've adopted, we call them general orders. There have been 8 adopted to date. We also immediately prioritized in mid-March, identifying every criminal case in which a defendant or a prisoner had a reasonable chance of immediate release from custody if a hearing was held right away. And we scheduled those hearings immediately and conducted all of them. We also immediately set out to acquire a license for the federal Zoom platform, which took some time. And once we had it, our IT staff began collaborating with the 6 jails where Maine's federal prisons are held, 5 in Maine and 1 in New Hampshire, so that we could conduct hearings at the jails. I want to acknowledge the great work and support that we received from our U.S. Marshal Ted Short and his staff, our U.S. Attorney Halsey Frank and his staff, and our federal defender David Benjamin and his staff, making all that happen. Our video capacity and capabilities are now fully operational. Every member of our clerk staff who deals with court proceedings and every judge has received individualized training in how to use Zoom. And I'm happy to report that we are conducting video hearings now on a daily basis. In fact, 2 weeks ago, bankruptcy judge Mike Fagoni held the district's first video bench trial. The general orders that I spoke of are all available on the website. There are currently 6 that are effective, and we've also published various other practice-related materials on the website, which you can access specifically through the COVID-19 link that you'll see when you get to the opening page of our court's website. And so any lawyer that practices in federal court, I would certainly encourage you to read through the general orders that are in effect right now, as well as the related practice materials. I'm sure they'll be helpful. At the outset, we made the decision to keep both the Bangor and federal courthouses open and publicly accessible, and so they have remained open. We felt that was important so that people could physically enter the courthouse to file documents, and also so that people could enter the courthouse to meet with members of our clerk staff if they were in need of guidance. So the judges have remained fully active throughout the pandemic. We've continued to manage our cases, issue written decisions, and conduct conferences and hearings by telephone and video. And although there have been no grand jury sessions in the District of Maine since March, our criminal docket has remained very active with numerous bail hearings, changes of plea, and sentencing hearings. We've also seen a dramatic increase in the number of compassionate release petitions filed by federal prisoners under the First Step Act, who are seeking release based upon health concerns and the pandemic. On the civil side, as of the end of May, our civil filings were down about 27% from the same period in 2019. But of course, we are continuing to actively manage our civil cases and work on them. So that is a snapshot of what we have done. And so let me turn to what we are planning to do. And I will say that all of our planning is centered on two basic principles. The first is our goal is whatever we do to protect the health and safety of the public, our employees, our lawyers, anyone that has any reason to come into one of our courthouses. And secondly, to base our decisions on recognized science and practice standards. We are primarily employing the federal judiciary's COVID-19 recovery guidelines adopted by the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts in April. The guidelines establish gating criteria, which we will apply as we make judgments about reopening the courthouses to public proceedings. We have not adopted a fixed schedule for the resumption of court activities as of today. And the only currently scheduled in-person court events, and they are tentatively scheduled, will be the resumption of grand jury proceedings, possibly in July. We haven't adopted a target date for the resumption of jury trials. We are working on mitigation strategies once we reopen, and that includes the acquisition of PPE, such as masks and hand sanitizer and the like, so that we'll be ready to go. And we've requested an evaluation of the courthouse's air exchange and air filtration systems, because understanding how the air circulates within our courtrooms and within the courthouse is critical to taking effective steps to preventing the spread of COVID-19. The General Services Administration, which operates and runs both of our courthouses, is completing an assessment of those systems, and I expect to receive the results as early as this week, and that will be critical data. And we will then eventually establish a fixed timetable for the resumption, or when I say fixed, I should say a tentative timetable for the resumption of court events once we are reasonably certain that we can do so safely. Later this week, we will announce the formation of a new Court Operations Advisory Committee. The committee will have representatives from all of our key stakeholders and members of the private bar. And the advisory committee will be tasked with reviewing all of our plans related to the safe resumption of court events before any plans are adopted. I want to take this opportunity to encourage all the members of the bar to be in touch with us. We would welcome your suggestions, comments, whether positive or negative, and any ideas about our response to the pandemic. And the best way to reach us is through our clerk of court, Krista Berry. Her email address is published on the COVID-19 page of our website. And so with those comments, again, my thanks to the MSBA for providing and creating this forum, which I think is great. And I'm happy to respond to any questions. Pat?
Thank you, Judge Levy, and it's Chief Judge Levy. Yes, was that a role that, as far as the chief position, did Judge Torridson have that one before?
She did, yes.
So, when did you become chief?
I became chief in January of 2019.
Okay. Well, that shows you I don't get into the federal court very much, Your Honor. But I did want to ask, while others are thinking of maybe some questions that they had too, you had mentioned that you had worked with Zoom and getting a federal license.
Yes.
Is that how you're doing your video bench trials?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
We are using Zoom. We have we've established several Zoom stations in both courts for the judges, which are tailored for judging. And all the support, however, both IT and by our staff, is being provided from home. So the only people in the courthouse that are actually engaged in the Zoom conferences and hearings are the judges themselves.
Okay.
Our goal has been to minimize the frequency with which staff has to come into the courthouse. We're trying to protect the courthouses as best we can to make sure they're available for operations. And so a practice that we have followed since day one has been to keep to an absolute minimum the court staff that is needed in the courthouse itself.
Well, Chief, along with that, you mentioned that Judge Fagoni had the first video bench trial. And I may have missed this because you talked about a rollout of going forward, but did you talk about whether or not you are going to continue with having video bench trials until you do fully open the courts?
Yeah, we will. And so, you know, like everything else, learning to use Zoom as a platform to conduct a judicial proceeding is a learning experience, and we are all learning. The Judge Fagoni, the trial that Judge Fagoni presided over was a one-day trial. It involved one witness, and it did not involve multiple exhibits. But we will, of course, be having trials in which there's more than one witness, in which there are many exhibits. Some of those exhibits may be hard copies, and some of them might be electronic. And we are preparing ourselves to conduct evidentiary proceedings, whether it be a bench trial or possibly suppression hearings or other types of civil evidentiary hearings on Zoom until we're able to do it inside a courthouse. And so if any of the people who are watching, any of the attorneys who are watching have a case which has a matter that needs to be heard and needs an evidentiary hearing, that's something which would be worth taking up with the judge assigned to the case. So it is our plan to, moving forward, conduct those evidentiary hearings by Zoom, yes.
Great. Thank you, Judge. Let's see, are there any other, if anyone has a question they're thinking of right now, you can go off mute and ask before we say thank you to Chief Levy. I guess my thought that I was kind of curious about was that you are practicing in Portland, right, Judge?
Yeah, so my chambers is in Portland, but I actually sit also in Bangor. So the active judges, actually all the district court judges, take statewide assignments in civil cases. And so I have as many Bangor civil cases as Judge Walker, whose chambers is in Bangor, has in Bangor. On the criminal side, however, the Portland judges do the Portland cases, the Bangor judges do the Bangor cases.
That's right. And that's the thing. I thought I had heard Judge Walker was up in Bangor.
Yes, yes.
Well, I want to say that the interaction that I have had with your clerk staff has, I think it's Bob that I interact with the most. He's been very helpful, very courteous, and your marshals there, just great to work with. So I feel comfortable whenever I walk into your courthouse. And I really appreciate you joining us. We did get a contact information out to our participants here on how to send specific questions to your court. And we will, I'm sure, do that. Thank you very much, Chief Levy.
Thad, thank you. Thank you for the kind comments about Bob and the others that you've had contact with. That's, of course, great to hear. We do have wonderful people working for us. I want to say thank you to the lawyers. And of course, I wish everyone well.
Thank you, Judge. We're going to continue on with the rest of our agenda. Angela, can you just make sure we're all on the same page with what the MSBA is doing?
Sure can. Thanks, Judge Levy. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Angela.
So the MSBA staff is working. As you can see, I'm actually at home today because we're working on a staggered schedule just for the month of June to get people back into the being in the office and feeling comfortable. So we've got two groups that are working on off days. And I mentioned this last week. I created a back to work plan for my office. By no means is it some official type thing that I've had looked at by anybody in any kind of power, but I would be more than happy to share it just for some ideas if you're looking to reopen your offices, because I think a lot of it could translate well. But as of right now, the MSBA office is still closed to the public, which means we're not having visitors, members come in. If you need anything from us, though, please continue to reach out by email or by phone, because everyone is working. They just may or may not be in the office on a given day, but they are working from home. And if we don't answer the line, we are checking our voicemails or having them forwarded to our cell phones. So we're checking that stuff all the time. And if you have any questions, of course, you can always reach out to me or concerns about the Bar Association at my email, which is posted on this slide.
Thanks, Angela. Hey, I just had a couple things I wanted to segue into regarding business side of things. So there is this economic recovery committee that was stood up by Governor Mills. We are trying to get them whatever feedback we think is important as the Bar Association. Please, any ideas you have that you would like us to advocate on behalf of you or your clients, let us know. Can you still hear me all right, Angela? So sorry about that. I don't know why I'm having trouble with that connection.
You're just a little scratchy.
Got it. And then on the other side of things, we are still working on whether or not we have some consensus on whether or not an order regarding depositions would be helpful for discovery related to in-person or not in-person. So any additional tweaks, especially to the new order that came out on Friday that you want to voice, we can help get that word forward and consolidate that advocacy. We're there for you. I did want to bring up just on the business thought side of things. So President Trump, I guess, was in the state of Maine on Friday, which I heard about after he was here, I guess. And he made some comments, and our governor made a press release. If no one's seen it, I was surprised at how assertive / aggressive she was. So it's worth a read just to get the feel for what's been going on in our state. And on a personal side, I'm very thankful for protesters. Advocating change is so important. And I'm just all excited that there are people that are excited about making change. Anything else that you can think of, please let us know. Otherwise, Angela, any alibis?
No, sir.
All right, so we'll see you all on June 15th. Guest to be announced. Thank you.
Thank you.